What's up, my pilots? Angry Poncho here. This might be the hardest video I've ever made. Today's January 7th, 2024, and trigger warning for pet loss for this whole video. And I wouldn't blame you if you skipped because you don't want to see a grown man cry. But today, what I want to do is talk about Mr. B and make a sort of video obituary for him. I want to start with something that I wrote a little eulogy for him. Mr. B, with your sweet demeanor, you won your way into our house and into our hearts. I never would have imagined that the cat I was so reluctant to first adopt would one day become so dear to me that losing you would feel like losing a piece of my soul. You were an adorable, quirky boy who was loved by everyone who knew you. I wish we had gotten more time with you. And I'm sorry that in the end, all we could do was be there with you as you went to sleep one last time. You gave us endless joy and brightened so many dark days. I promise I will always remember you. I love you, Mr. B. Rest in peace. Mr. B passed away on September 18th, 2023. He went to sleep peacefully at our vet's office with Megan and I right there with him. It was one of the worst days of my life. When the vet told us that there was nothing they could do to restore the function of his kidneys, I knew that was the end for him, and waiting longer would only make him suffer. It was an agonizing decision, but I knew what had to happen. Megan knew too. In the grieving period right after his passing, Megan and I both felt a lot of guilt. I don't know if it was really earned or not, but we both felt like, or maybe just wished that there was more we could have done. But in the end, I don't think anything would have changed it. Even if we had noticed some of the signs sooner, he probably wouldn't have made it another couple months. By the time a cat's showing signs of kidney issues, like Mr. B was, they have already lost more than 75% of their kidney function. It's kind of the benefit of having two kidneys. Even if one croaks, the other will keep going for a while. But it also means that you don't really see how serious it is until it's too late to do anything. At least in Mr. B's case, that's how it was. When he passed away, the vet let us have a few minutes to say goodbye. And I remember I rubbed the top of his head like I always did, and it pulled his eyes open, and I closed his eyes back for him. And I know at that point he was gone and it didn't matter, but it didn't feel right for him to have his eyes open. And I feel like being there for him at the very end gave him some comfort. But I hope it did, because it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And it was, I guess it was traumatic, because it kind of haunts me still. Nobody wants to see, but I couldn't bear to have him be alone, have a bunch of strangers around him when he went to sleep. I needed him to know that he was loved. So dearly loved. I know I'm putting myself in a very vulnerable position posting this video. I hope you'll be respectful of Mr. B and myself in the comments. I'm sure that probably almost all of you can relate to the pain of losing a pet. Hopefully you've not had to suffer the loss of anything worse, like a human family member. After we had finally said goodbye to Mr. B, we left. We went home and cried. And we cried some more. It was dark. I mean, the situation was dark. And we deeply grieved for a while. Obviously, I'm still grieving, but we ended up missing our brother, my brother-in-law, Megan's brother's wedding, because we just couldn't bring ourselves to celebrate anything. Even now, 3 months later, it's still sharp. It still hurts. And I want 20 years from now to be able to watch this video and remember just how acute that agony was. But I don't just want to be a bummer this whole video. I guess one last thing, and then I want to talk about a lot of the funny things that Mr. B would do. We have a little memorial set up in our living room with Mr. B's ashes. I'm going to show you those now. We have a picture of him that sits up there next to it. Him looking like an absolute prince sitting on top of my computer. And next to it we have his collar and his favorite string. And then we have his urn. He got him a nice wooden urn with Mr. B, the sweetest boy, written on the front. And it's hard to hold, honestly. The day I went and picked it up, I sat in the car and held it and cried. Because he shouldn't fit in a box this small. Alright, enough sad stuff. I want to talk about some of the things that I want to remember about him. These are all things that I thought were really sweet. Or at least weird little quirks that made him who he was. I guess I should start by telling again the story of how we got him. We lived in an apartment across town, and he would come up to the back door and look inside. And at the time we had another cat named Mina, who's still kicking around. She's getting kind of fat and old now. But she was a one cat type of cat. She did not want a brother. So when this cute stray, who was obviously not fixed, started coming around the back porch, Megan would go out and pet him. And he was super sweet. He was definitely an abandoned pet, not a feral cat. And he would come and just sit right in your lap and climb and rub and bunt and purr and just be an absolute sweetheart. And then Megan started feeding him. And unbeknownst to me, she was feeding him every day. I thought it was just every now and then when she saw him. Nope, there was food being put out every day. And so pretty soon he was coming up to our back porch all the time, hanging out there. And we realized that, we really don't want to feed an unfixed tomcat and just have him out there making kittens. So we decided that we needed to at least get him neutered. And in the lead up to all this, while we had seen him, I didn't want to give him a real name because I didn't want Megan to fall in love with him. Because again, we already had a cat and she did not want a brother. And then I started calling him Mr. Big Balls. because I didn't want to give him a real name. And he was unfixed and had prominent testicles. And there's something so funny about that. Like, the fact that cat genitalia, like, hides up inside, but the testicles are just, like, out there. Like, furry. It's so funny to me. But, so that's how we got the name Mr. Big Balls. And we figured, okay, well, we at least have to get him neutered so that he's not making a bunch of stray kittens. And then we kind of figured, oh, he's going to be in the house for a couple of days after that to recover. And from there, it was just, okay, we're going to adopt him. We're going to bring him inside, and he'll be our boy. And it turned out Mina actually had another home that was happy to take her, which is Megan's dad. And he had previously, Mina had previously been his cat. And when he moved out here to Texas, he didn't want to bring Mina with him because he was afraid that she would get out of the house and get killed by coyotes. Because at that time, she was a outdoor type of cat, and she loved to go around in the woods in Georgia. But out here on the plains, there's nowhere to hide. There's no trees to climb. If predators come around, you're in trouble. And so he gave Mina to us, or to Megan. And Megan had Mina in her apartment when I met her. Or I'm not sure on the exact timeline. It was after I met her, but before I moved into the apartment, she got Mina from her dad. And then Mina was the cat that made me a cat person, because I got home. I got to Megan's apartment before her one day. I would come to her place on the weekends early in our relationship, and we'd spend the weekend together. And I had a key. So I got there before her, and she was still at class. And I sat on the couch, and no one else was home. Even she had a roommate, but she wasn't there. And Mina came along the back of the couch. And Mina's disposition, she's sweet, but she kind of doles it out in little increments. So she came over and sat in my lap because she loved to love on the first person who got home, because she was bored and lonely during the day when the house was empty. But then, like, by the time the second or third person got home, she was just like, oh, hey. So she came over, sat in my lap, started making biscuits and purring, and it clicked in my head. I was like, oh, this is why people like cats. I get it now. So we, of course, brought Mina with us when we moved out here, and we ended up living right across town from Megan's dad. And it just so happened that we had let Mina out a couple times at our apartment on a harness. And one time she got spooked, and after that did not want to go outside anymore. It's probably also her getting a little older and being less adventurous, kind of just being a lazy cat now. So that meant we could actually give her back to Megan's dad, and she'd be safe and stay in the house, and no worries. And he was happy to have his cat back, and it meant that we had space in our house to bring Mr. B inside. And you're probably wondering why we didn't give him a real name. By the time we brought him into the house, we had been calling him Mr. Big Balls for so long, nothing else sounded like his name. Like, nothing else felt right. And so we called him Mr. B. And that's the story of how we got him. We used to tell people his name was Mr. Bojangles, but our friends knew the real story. I think the vet just had him down as Mr. B on the paperwork, you know. So yeah, that's how he snuck his way into our house. And such a sweet lad. So we're pretty sure the reason he came to our porch was because he used to belong to our neighbors 2 doors down at the apartment complex where we used to live, and they moved out and left him. Abandoned him. Just left him behind. Which is like, fuck you if you do that. That is so cruel. That is so evil. And it pisses me off, honestly. And then he thought that our back door was their back door because they're kind of like, they looked the same, the back porches on those apartments. And he was only like a year old. So the way we figure is some college students lived there and got a kitten. And then the semester ended and their kitten was a cat, and so they just kind of abandoned him, which is so fucking cold. I I don't want to wish bad circumstances on someone, but I hope they had some shit going on in their life to justify leaving their cat behind, because I don't know, man. Anyway, so yeah, that was one of the reasons that it was so sad. We were so motivated to bring him in was because it was clear that he was an abandoned pet, and he was such a sweetheart. Did not deserve to be living on the streets. And that's how we got him. He's been our boy ever since. He went with us to Denver, came back with us from Denver. He doesn't really like car rides, but we gave him some medicine from the vet to just give him a chill pill, basically. And he does fairly well. All right, now I've got a list of things that I want to talk about that I liked about him. So, one of his favorite pastimes was stealing people's chairs. If he was hanging out near you and you got up, I hope that's not fucking up the recording. One of his favorite pastimes was stealing chairs. If he was sitting near you and you got up, he would run over and take your seat. I don't know if it was just because they're warm or it smelled like a person he liked, or if he was just being cheeky. Maybe all of the above. But it was adorable and really consistent. He did it all the time. He actually tried to steal Megan's chair like 10 minutes before he died, when we were saying our last goodbyes to him and holding him and letting him know we were going to miss him. Megan got up to go blow her nose or something, and he immediately tried to steal her seat in the vet's office. So it makes me believe that he was still, hopefully mostly himself at the end. He also loved to, I have it written down here, outdoor time with dirt. He loved to roll around in the dry dust that we have here in the plains of Texas. And he would go outside and just roll in dirt. And it's like, I just watched you groom yourself for half an hour. Why are you doing this? Gotta hide from predators, I guess. He definitely had a thing about, like, wanting his humans to be scented properly. If you wash your hands, he would want to, like, rub his nose and, like, fix your hand smell to smell like him. Of course, if you scratched him or pet him, that worked too. But especially after you took a shower, he would come and sit in your lap. If you would sit on the floor after the shower, sit on the mat there, he would come sit in your lap and just rub his head on you and re-scentify you, mark you as his human again. So sweet. Kind of possessive, but very cute. He was also a lap boy. He really loved to sit in laps. That was how I mostly bonded with him. I think he spent, I guess, by the last year of his life or so, he was coming into my office, I think every day just about, and would come sit in my lap. I would scratch him, and we'd have our bonding time, and it became just part of our routine to spend time together. He was sweet to everybody, even the people at the vet. He was actually nice to the vet techs, even though every time we took him to the vet, they were going to put a thermometer in his butt, give him shots, draw blood, and who knows what else, try and look in his mouth. And he just tolerated it all so sweetly. Never tried to attack, or never tried to swat or bite anybody. The most he ever got was like a meh sound when they put the thermometer in him. He loved to sleep by feet. He'd sleep at the end of our bed, just right there by the feet. But he was a little bit tsundere about it, because he wouldn't go there until we turned the lights off. And then once the lights were off and he was done doing his nightly activities, which I'll get to in a minute, he would come and sleep on top of my feet. He also liked to hunt that string I showed you earlier. And he liked to hunt it at night. And he would pick it up and like fling it around, and he'd bat it across the floor. And then eventually he would carry it around in his mouth, and he would sing the song of his people at like 1 a.m. and tell the epic tale of his triumph over the string. And he would just sit out in the living room with the string like in his mouth still, and his meow was like, it's like, I am victorious. It was so cute. He did that a lot toward the end of his life. It was one of his favorite activities. He loved to interrupt Let's Plays. He would show up and bonk his head against the mic. Just like to get in there. He would show up as a guest on camera occasionally for Dungeons and Dragons. So he was an honorary member of that campaign. And he was friends with several of our friends. Our roommate, Ken, that we lived with up in Denver, longtime friend of ours, our fishing at our wedding. And Mr. B loved him. I mean, we were only up there for about 8 or 9 months. And in that period, he was just as happy to be in Ken's lap as he was to be in mine. And he also fell in love with the people that took care of him when Megan and I had to be somewhere else. So my brother-in-law Matthew and our good friend Hugo both pet sit him for extended periods at one point or another. And you could tell afterwards when they would come by the house, he'd be like, "Ah, it's you. I like you." He loved to get his chin scratched. Those little come hither scritches underneath their chin. It was one of his favorite things. He liked to look out the window at birds. Common cat W. But he was a little bit picky about what he'd get excited about. And he would make that noise that cats do when they see something outside and they want to kill it. But he would only do that if he saw a really fat, big old bird. The little, like, songbirds, he would just watch them like, what is this? But then when a pigeon would land, immediately his ears would go down. He'd go, It was so cute. He only was excited about the potential for a fat pigeon. I don't know how many he actually caught while he was stray, but he must have had a favorite food. I'll put it that way. He would go on hunger strikes. And I think part of this kind of eventually led to us not realizing he was sick as soon as, or sooner. Part of it, this is part of the reason that we didn't realize right away that he was sick at the end of his life, because he had gone on hunger strikes on 2 previous occasions. And both times, it was because he didn't like his food anymore, and he wanted a new kind of food. The first time it happened, we were so worried about him. This was a few years ago. We thought he had, like, cancer or something and was dying. And for, like, a week and a half, we were trying different things. We were, like, giving him food, like, that had been softened in water in case he had a toothache. We were trying to offer him, like, chicken squeeze-ups. Like, he wouldn't take anything. He just didn't want to eat his food. He didn't like it anymore. And eventually we took him to the vet, and it's like, this cat's got to start eating. You know, he was still drinking water, he was still peeing, so we were like, okay, his body's, like, still running. He's not, like, dying, but something's up. We took him to the vet, and the vet opens up a container of chicken baby food, and he's immediately just like, nom, 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 that's what I want. Yeah, it's something good. It's like, what the hell? And he was eating, like, treats here and there, just enough for us to be like, okay, maybe he's going to start eating now. And we take him to the vet, and then it's just like, yeah, he just wants something else to eat. We took him home, and then I went out to the PetSmart and bought 2 different bags of cat food. And when I walked into the kitchen, he saw me and he screamed. Like, finally, they figured it out. And I gave him a bowl, and he immediately chowed down on a whole bowl of food. It's like, dude, you could have knocked your bowl on the floor or something. You didn't have to starve yourself for a week and a half. Like, ugh. So he would go on hunger strikes. And he also would take really big shits. Just some Mr. B lore for you. And part of it was that he would get dehydrated sometimes because he had, like, kidney issues, like minor ones earlier in his life. And he had kidney, not stones, but urinary crystals. And that was why he was on a special urinary health diet. And one of the things that would do is make him kind of dehydrated sometimes. And so he'd get constipated and then lay a turd that was, like, frightening. Like, I feel bad for his butt, the poor boy. Moving on. He was really bad at drinking water. Like, not that he didn't remember, you know, like he was irresponsible or something. No, he was actually bad at it. When he would try and get the water up with his tongue, like, a third of it would go in his mouth, a third would get flung straight out in front of him, and a third would go up and land on his head. So you could see him come through the house after he'd had a big drink of water, and the top of his head would be, like, glistening with, like, dozens of little droplets sitting on top of his fur. So funny. I don't know why he did that. He never figured out how to drink water correctly. He liked to sit in chairs like he was people. Like, he would sit at the dining table and just kind of look around at the table for playing Magic or a board game or something. He would sit there and watch. Occasionally, he'd reach out and, like, roll some dice. Oh, because he was neutered later in his life, he still had some effects from testosterone when he was younger. And as a result, he would occasionally get a cat boner, which was kind of uncomfortable, I'll be honest. It's like, I don't want to see that. Put it away, Mr. B. And if you were especially unlucky and you were petting him like right after he woke up from a nap, which I stopped doing when I realized this, uh, you could even get a little surprise. That's all I'll say. He loved to groom his belly like a bachelor, which means like he would sit down like on his butt, put like both of his legs up, and like his belly would like round over in the front, and he would just sit there and like go to town grooming himself. And it's like, God, you look like a bachelor with a beer belly. So goofy. He loved his pet friends. He was very sweet to Theodore when Theodore was a kitten, and then they kind of became like rascally rivals as Theo got older. Uh, and he was always sweet to Jasper, our dog, and Jasper really loved him too. They would cuddle and sit together. They would groom each other, play together. So sweet. It was adorable watching them learn how to communicate. Like when they were both interested in playing, because there was a long period there where they were our only two pets, and they wanted to play with each other, but they didn't know how to communicate at first. So it's like Mr. B would come up and like be kind of spooky, like a cat that's trying to start a play fight, and Jasper would actually get scared, like she was going to get beat up. And then Jasper would try and do her like paws down in front thing, and like dogs do when they're excited and trying to instigate play. And Mr. B would be like, "What the fuck?" And eventually they figured it out. Um, I have a note here called, I just wrote belly breakfast battle. This was a daily occurrence that happened for a couple months, early last year, I believe, where we have a cat wall in the house, and Mr. B would go across it to get to his food up on the mantle in the morning for breakfast. And Theodore would sit on a shelf just below and reach up and try to swat Mr. B's belly as he went by. And he did it every day to the point that Mr. B was expecting it. And he would go up there, and Theo would hop up, and they would just look at each other. And eventually he would run by. He loved to lick the condensation off of glasses. This was a cat who appreciated fresh, crisp water. And to that end, when our friend Hugo cat sat him, he didn't have like a bowl for some reason. He didn't give him a bowl. He gave him a glass, like a cup of water. And then Mr. B figured out that, hey, the stuff that's in the cups is really good. So that like just came out of the fridge, or it's like cold from the sink. And after that, he wanted glass. He wanted like a glass of water sometimes. And if you had a glass of water, he was going to want some of it. It's just so funny to me. He learned the sound of ice cubes tinkling in a glass, and that would summon him to come steal some of your water. So funny to me. But he was just an absolute sweetheart, and I loved him so much. I'm gonna put up a slideshow of photos next to this during editing, and just show y'all all kinds of different stuff. Maybe I'll have relevant photos for some of these stories. Probably some of them I won't. But thank you for watching this video. I'm sure it was probably difficult for a lot of you, so if that's the case, especially thank you for watching. I'd love to hear down in the comments some of your happy memories about your pets. You know, living or dead. It's all fine. Tell me about your fur babies. I hate that term, but there it is. I do still miss Mr. B every day. I think about him all the time. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Alright. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all tomorrow.